Welcome to Sage Sisters. We are sisters, besties, moms, and co-founders having a fun catch-up on parenting and life. Hey, I'm Ann.
And I'm Kate. What up, TA?
How's it going?
Good. Monday. Happy to be here. Excited for the pod. We got a good one.
I'm so excited. So we have a special guest today, and it is my topic. And this is something that our community of parents, a lot of you have reached out and talked about this topic in particular, but it's a very hot topic. It's very important, and it's somewhat controversial, but we wanted to talk about today the impact of technologies in schools and what parents need to know. And today I'll go ahead and introduce our guest, John Clark. He is an expert on this topic.
Woohoo!
He has 17 years of experience as an educator. He founded one of the top performing middle schools in Denver, and he has just recently launched Best Days, which is an education and leadership consulting firm that supports and coaches school leaders and their teams. So we're excited to have you on, John, to hear you.
Welcome, John.
And your
Glad to be here.
perspective.
This is great.
Yeah.
Maybe kick us off. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, outside of the work stuff, married to my wife since 2000 and 10.
Put you on the spot there.
Yeah, I know. She's an attorney here in Colorado, but we have three beautiful kids, 8, 5, and 2. Thriving, doing well. My one addition, my daughter Ellie has Down syndrome, and so really cool community to be a part of, but also, you know, aligns my perspective a little bit towards kids with particular needs and sports as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're so lucky to have you. Maybe if you've heard this podcast, we usually kick it off with highs, lows. So why don't you start us off? What is your high today?
Perfect. Yeah. High for me is my family is returning to a little bit of normalcy after my wife has been pretty consumed with a trial that she had recently. It was one of those situations where it was really all hands on deck for her and her team, and many hours, which meant a lot of time with me 1-on-3 with the kids and doing all the practice pickups and things like that, which happy to do, thrilled that she was doing something, you know, so great. But it is nice now that we're kind of full strength again with her back. And then, you know, that to kind of kick that off this week, a bunch of buddies are coming out with their families, and we're going up to the mountains, going to Breckenridge with about 14 adults and 12 kids, which should be fun.
Oh, awesome.
We're excited for our wives that we can put together a good weekend. So it should be a lot of fun.
Man, college buddies is in Breckenridge. That sounds delightful.
Yeah, right.
Is it still ski season, or are we past that?
Yeah, for a couple more weeks. Well, one of the resorts up there, A Basin, it'll go till, there's no snow. It's kind of known for that. But most of them shut down because of kind of restrictions because of federal land and stuff like that about the 11th. So we got a couple more weeks. So some of them might get in some skiing. I'm just going up there to relax and probably avoid the skiing this time.
I was going to say, getting 3 kids on skis.
Yeah.
2 thumbs down.
It also sounds like a knee injury waiting to happen for me. So
I love skiing, and we've done it a couple times, but we've hit our quota for the year. We're good. So yeah.
Well, we have a term Ann and I use, which is Doty, Dad of the Year. Mm-hmm. So you stepping up while your wife was busy, Doty material.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
we love what she does all the time. So yeah,
you get full credit, and that's a long time, because my high is kind of like a little bit similar to yours, but watered down version, because my husband was out of town for only 4 days, and so it looks like you were doing the kind of single dad taking the stay at home to the next level with 2 months of it. But even after 4 days, I was ready to invite somebody down. So my college roommate came down this weekend, and we just had the best time. It was so great, and she was all into the kids. So the kids were excited to have her. My second daughter, Lola, really took advantage of her, and before I knew it, she had her head in the sink. It was doing like a full spa treatment, like actually wetting her hair. And I was like, oh my gosh, Courtney, thank you for that. But yeah, it was nice to have some reinforcements even after that amount of time.
Is there anything better too than like reuniting with college buddies that you haven't seen in a while, and then it just feeling right back where you picked it, like picking up right where you left off?
100%. Like nothing's changed. You don't have to talk to that person all the time, but when you connect, it's like nothing's changed. It's great. It's so good. Easy friendships. What's your high this week, Kate?
I had a chill weekend. It was so relaxing. Nice. It was light on the kids' sports. We just had one Little League game. It was
Mhm.
also rainy. I was going to play tennis both days and it got rained out, which at the time I was like, dang it. And then it was kind of glorious. I slept in. The kids were begging me to take them to the Minecraft movie, which a couple weeks ago I had punted. So the time was here. So I talked a friend of mine into it and we decided to take our kids, no husbands. So we were outnumbered, but it was actually great. We both took a nap during the movie.
Perfect.
That's perfect. Yeah. It's a great time for
They
that.
loved it. They were both, all screaming best movie ever.
Was there, now that it's been in the news, that there's like an outburst in the middle of the movie where the kids go nuts? Did that
Yeah.
happen in your theater?
I had read about that and I was prepared for the worst. And I've heard about like food fights and all the things. We had like at that moment a bunch of kids stand up and scream. And our kids thought it was like the coolest, funniest
they
thing
loved
ever.
it.
So it was kind of perfect.
Okay. Well,
Little something.
maybe you don't know because you were snoozing, but would you recommend the movie?
It was loud. My kids loved it. We gave the full popcorn candy experience. So they were in hog heaven. I don't know if I'm a huge Jack Black fan. It's got, a lot of the songs had like Tenacious D energy.
Oh, yeah.
You remember?
He sang a lot through it. I know exactly.
Yeah.
It's
there
like
were funny parts, but it was loud and violent and the kids loved it.
I loved him in School of Rock. I mean, that was a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
He has
I liked
some
him in
good
Holiday,
movies.
but
Holiday, yeah. As the
Signs
love
of-
interest, who knew?
Signs of turn 40, at least for me. You say it's too loud, and then I'm asking where are the subtitles. So
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It was but it was one of those theaters where it had like the cozy recliners.
Love those.
And we may or may not had a beer and then just
wave it in.
But that's my idea of a good kid movie, in all honesty.
yeah, right.
So I was happy.
I love
Again,
it.
chill weekend. We were watching the Warriors. We watched a lot of like TV together, which just felt fun. Like a lot of family snuggles on the couch. So anyways, it was lovely.
I love it. All right,
Yeah.
John, what's your low this week?
Low that's been persisting for a few weeks is my 2-year-old and his sleep habits. He and his brother, Ian, 5-year-old, share a room, which is overall okay, but Ian has some particular needs, especially around falling asleep, which Sam has caught on to. So most of the time, 2 people have to be in the room for each of them to have a person to get them to sleep. But Sam's particular issue is coming in the middle of the night after he's fallen asleep, waking up, realizing there's not someone there and screaming for dad. I'm universally known to be his favorite parent currently.
Good for you. Except at nighttime.
It's great. Yeah. And so screaming, and not just you hear him kind of saying my name, but blood curdling, jump out of the bed. Like, what's happening?
So you're on edge, can't sleep.
Luckily, Ian slept through it a bit, except the other night it was one of those like fire hydrant, like fire alarm sort of things. Ian's screaming, Sam's screaming, and both of us had to be in there just get him calmed down. But Sam, up until a couple nights ago, was insistent that I couldn't even just sit next to him. I had to lay on the floor, the hardwood floor next to him. I told him yesterday, I said, man, I'm not, I talked to him as if he was like, I don't know, 18. I said, hey, we're not
rationalizing.
We're not doing this anymore. And he said yes. And so last night he wasn't as insistent on that, but he still yelled out a few times for me to come and get him back. But
how long is the process to get him back to sleep? How long are you on that wood floor?
Well, the problem was, this is why I can't do it anymore. I would fall asleep and wake up with just like terrible pain in my shoulder.
Yeah.
The other night, Meg came in after she'd been working late and said, you need to go to bed. And so I walked back into bed. But if I sit there, he falls asleep pretty quick, and then I can get out of there and get back to bed. But then what tends to happen is it takes 2 or 3 more times where he wakes up, realizes someone's not there. But once he's like, last night it happened around midnight to 1, and then he was pretty good the rest of the night. So that was good.
What we've found in our house is that I guess it's good, but it's a little cruel. It's like when one kid is going through a sleep issue, the others are fine. That kid then is like better. And then all of a sudden you have another kid that rolls into a sleep issue. It's like we constantly, it's whack-a-mole. Yeah. It's like you're constantly like, oh, I can sleep. And then 2 days later, another kid is up every night. It's like, this is.
Yeah. The good news by 3 is you've had enough of these ups and downs that at least it doesn't, I just kind of work through it.
Yeah.
But,
well, I wanted to kill one of my kids this weekend. Her Apple Watch, she set an alarm for 1:30 a.m. accidentally.
Oh, I was like, for what purpose?
to wake
I don't
mom
know. I don't know. But I woke up. What is that? God. Dang.
up.
Anyways, it's always something.
Yeah.
Anne, what's your low?
My low is yard work, weeding. My husband, as I mentioned, was out of town, and I have been wanting to weed the beds of like the front of the house for a
You
while.
weeded while he was out of town?
Yes.
Too
So,
much. Too much.
you know, but I kind of wanted to do it. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. And here's what I'll say about weeding or yard work. It's like, okay, when the dad is doty for watching the kids, like
Mhm.
a parent move, the mother doesn't get credit like that. But the husband does not get credit for doing yard work. It's just like kind of expected. But when you see the wife out there, I had many neighbors going by being like, good for you, like thumbs up, like
Mhm.
Phil's going to be so happy, you know? So I feel like I got credit. And also, it's been a project of ours for a while. And that's the one thing in the yard that I'll take on. So I did it. But now my back, similar to your shoulder, John, I can't move. I overdid it. It's like absolutely crippling. And it's, you know, there's no like benefit. I'm not getting toned. I'm just sore.
What is that quote? Is it Wedding Singer? Well, your back's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
I'm butchering that. I should never have attempted it.
I will do a side by
My
side.
fingers hurt. Well, your back's gonna hurt. I'll stop. It's
No.
not getting better.
I
Happy
like that you
Gilmore.
went for it though. Was it Happy Gilmore?
Happy Gilmore.
Oh,
Oh,
thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you. All right, great.
Somebody helped you out. Somebody had to.
hmm
What's your low, Kate?
You know, I struggled to come up with a low. You know, you're having a good week. Usually it's like Rant City over here. It's like
Yeah, I
I'm
have to, like,
struggling to come up
pause
with
you.
a high and yeah, poly positive over here. The one thing I was saying is like I have been so uninspired in the kitchen. Like just nothing is really sounding good. I don't know. I need some recipe inspo. So I'm actually this is a PSA.
Okay.
You, John, any of our listeners, have you had a really good meal that's not hard to cook? Because my skills are quite limited, but I need something fresh. I'm sick of everything that I usually make, is kind of how I'm feeling.
Yeah. I have two go-tos that I've already sent you,
Which
but I'll
ones?
link them too. They're so easy. It's Brussels sprouts, ground turkey already made, and you do Rayo's Alfredo sauce
You know,
and
I
bake
forgot
it.
about that one.
So easy. Kids like it, relatively healthy. Wave it in.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually a great one because I want healthy. That's the thing. But everything healthy is like all I want is pasta, but
Right.
trying to find something that's like good. I canceled my Factor meals. I was getting lunch delivered through this service called Factor. I just got sick of the taste. I was just kind of like, I need something different.
Yeah.
So
John,
mean,
do
that
you
was-
do cooking at your house?
I mean, I will cook. I'm bad at the meal plan part of it. So if
Mhm.
it's like, here's your recipe, here's your thing, you do it all. Thrilled to do that. So that's been one of the challenges of the last month or so is Meg's really good at that. So a lot of bean and cheese burritos or just bean
Okay.
together
that
with
actually sounds
bean
pretty good.
outside. I mean, we do that once a week around
You
here.
homemaking the bean and cheese burritos?
I mean, I'm taking a can of refried beans,
Yeah.
heating it up, and I'm putting some shredded cheese in it and on
Full
it.
credit awarded. Full
You know
credit
what?
awarded.
It's great, and it's one of the meals that they eat the most of, and you put it with some veggies and fruit on the side, and we're good to go. So
I'm going to try that. I actually did see a meal prep where somebody was meal prepping and they're like, you know, the protein of a bean burrito is awesome for kids. I'm going to try it.
Well,
Yeah.
and Cal, who's my picky one, he likes bean burritos. So, John,
once a week, it's good. It's easy. It takes.
that's the kind of inspo. That's my skill level too. So appreciate you.
That's where I'm
Okay,
at.
An expert on all things today. I
There we
love
go.
it.
Hey.
Good job.
an expert. What's that like on this podcast? I don't know. With that, should we move into the content, the
Yeah.
expert opinion content?
Do it.
Okay, Anne, you want to tee it up?
Yeah, I think we should actually just start with maybe John, you giving us a little bit more background as an educator and kind of what your brief synopsis is of this topic in general of technology in the schools. What do you see out there?
Awesome. Yeah. First off, great to be here. I think one of the great things about being here is just a lot of my thoughts really align with the way you guys are approaching it. So just want to appreciate getting to be on with you. Just in terms of some specifics around my work career, I did spend 6 years as a teacher. I think that's important. That I was in that for a bit, but about the last 11 have really been in school leadership. Most of those actually as a school principal. And so
What grades were you teaching?
mostly middle school,
Okay.
Okay.
6th, 7th, and 8th. I had one stint where I moved up to a high school, somebody decided that's not for me, and then because it was too good of a gig, and they moved me back down to middle school.
Okay.
But yeah, I found my way there and keep returning to that for a variety of reasons. But a little bit about the schools that I worked in. When I first came, I was working in Catholic schools out here in Denver, but found my way into a charter school out here called the Denver School of Science and Technology, or DSST. And that's where I've spent most of my career is what's called charter management organizations. They're these bigger district kind of level charter schools versus kind of your standalone charters. And so, spent a number of time there. And one thing I would note about the schools that I've primarily worked in is while there's, in many of them, quite a bit of diversity in terms of, students who come from incredible means and wealth and their families to families that battle homelessness, I would say the vast majority or higher percentage of the students that we sought to serve were more marginalized students who came from adverse circumstances or adverse backgrounds. And so, that really frames a lot of my thinking on this as well. But then for myself, coming from quite a bit of privilege, I think I bring a lot of that into it too. So the one unique thing I would say about DSST was that when it was founded by Bill Kurtz in, I think, 2004, it was going to be one of the first kind of, hey, we're going to be a one-to-one program, right? And using that. And he
what
was
does one? Yeah, what does one-to-one mean?
Sorry, one-to-one laptops for kiddos. And so they had some national recognition at the time, and still obviously with their kind of STEM background, that plays a critical role. And now most schools, I think, end up with kids with the one-to-one computer. So that framed a little bit of that, even though I came a bit later, it was like year 10 of the program and like year 4 or 5 of them having a middle school. So in terms of just framing my thinking on this, I know you guys have referenced the anxious generation quite a bit, but even prior to that, I think there was a lot of just piecemeal things out there, right, that really spoke to the two things I think are most damning about all of this, right, is just the amount of screen time, and we can get into that. But the second is just like the way that we use it to as a filler for us, I think, in kind of the safety, network of things where kids are not allowed to be bored or not allowed to, kind of be creative. And certainly that fits in with parenting. But I think in schools also in an environment where we're looking for high results for kids and we're looking to achieve academic outcomes, there's a lot of goodwill and good thinking that goes towards how can tech help to expedite this? How can tech help to make this more efficient? But, at what point do we get to a point where that's replacing, I think, a lot of just what our kids are doing in school and how they're doing it? And so there's a lot that goes into that. Obviously, my own kids has allowed me to begin to think, asking a lot more questions that I'm happy to get into about what are the sort of questions you're asking your schools about how they handle tech, what its purpose is, because I certainly think we need it in school for a lot of reasons for kids to kind of grow in with that, for how it allows us to get incredible data on kid learning so that we can improve and increase that. And, I don't want to leave our kids behind. And I think it's really important that kids are learning how to leverage tools in safe and smart ways. But it doesn't have to be the only way that they access learning.
Now, I have a mental model, John, where there was some tech used pre-COVID. Then COVID hit and sort of everyone had no choice but to have like kind of a mass adoption of lots of screen time. Everything moved to Zoom, for goodness sakes. And then at least in my kids' school, it seems like after COVID, we didn't revert to sort of where they were pre-COVID. It's definitely like at a clip higher. Has that been your experience, or what have you seen just in terms of like the amount of tech and like COVID remnants, if you will?
Yeah, actually awesome that you brought that up. I really want to plug an article for folks to read here. It's called Take Away Their Cell Phones. It's by a guy named Doug Lemov. Doug Lemov works for an organization called Teach Like a Champion, and they come out of Uncommon Schools. And he wrote this article as school kids were returning to schools after the pandemic. One thing he'll note in some of the research that he cites there, there's a psychiatrist named Dr. Twinge who talks about this, is actually a lot of the issues related to our kids' mental health problems were coming to light as early as 2016. And so while what I would say actually the pandemic did is it accelerated that and just made it even more prominent. And I think it entered a collective conscious that I hope actually leverages us to do something about it.
Right.
And so Yes, the thing was that because of that, what we saw was on it and using it. And I think schools saying, oh, this is something we need to keep going. You constantly heard during the pandemic, well, how are we going to keep some of these tools alive?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to continue to use them because they're so effective and efficient? Whether it was how to use a Pear Deck was something that was like interactive Google Slides essentially,
Mm-hmm.
or any variety of things. Um, and and while that's good and I think effective, I think what we've also seen is if we go too far in that direction, it gets away from I think what Doug talks about, which is you actually want to you want to rewire kids for belonging. And so if we are using tech for one-on-one stuff all the time, basically as a babysitter,
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting thing is how we use that just to keep kids kind of occupied and calm. Then we really lose the opportunity for them to be doing more interacting around their learning about community, because school, while it's about academic achievement, I think is first and foremost, it's that through the lens of how we connect as people in our learning together. Right. So,
Since you were a part of the school that kind of brought one-to-one way back when, what's the biggest difference now? Like, are we just using technology way more now than back then? Or like at the very beginning, what was your view on the technology versus now?
yeah. And, I think about my early days as a teacher. I worked in a pretty like low resourced Catholic school, and I really wanted my kids. I was a writing teacher. I really wanted them to experience not just writing some things by hand, but hey, what's it look like to get published? And you type your papers and you print them. So I actually remember collecting these old computers they had stored away somewhere. I was like had about 8 of them. They were the giant, screens that actually had a
Mm-hmm.
back to them, and was able to hook them to a printer. And so my kids would write, and then they would use the computers. And so and then I think even in the time I transitioned to DSST, where kids were way more used to this idea of like, I get a computer. One thing I would actually note is just the way that kids think about technology in terms of, is it like my right versus kind of like, oh, this is a cool thing or a privilege, or this is really fun. So at the beginning, it was
Interesting.
new and fun, and there was a reverence toward it. I get my own
Mm-hmm.
computer, I have to treat it well. Over time, this is just, I get one of these, I'm entitled to this. And I even think in my own parenting, I ask myself, how much am I making these experiences and these things either feel special or only connected to certain things I want my kiddos to use them for, like appropriate learning,
Mm-hmm.
versus kids begin to feel entitled for them. I mean, even
Right.
this past weekend, I recognized recently my kids probably watched a few more shows and things like that. And I was just this weekend was like, it's just whatever we got to do. Let's do no TV this weekend,
Yeah.
because they were beginning this idea of like, I get up, I get to watch a show. Why
Mm-hmm.
aren't you letting me? And so we removed ourselves, and pretty quickly they rewired themselves.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, as a parent over here, we are at a public school in Tennessee, but our kids do get Chromebooks and they get them in kindergarten. And they don't necessarily use them in their day to day at kindergarten, but they have access to it.
Is it
And
one to one, Anne?
it's one-to-one, and it just feels like it's an extra layer currently that I have to fight at home, which is, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure there's a benefit at school, which we can get into. But when they're home, we have removed the iPads for similar reasons, right? When they are on the iPads, even a little bit every day, they become reliant on it or always asking, can I, can I, can I? So we just remove it and only allow it on occasion. And then the TV, we also are like, I'm fine with the little content. We've talked about that being healthy. But then there's a point where it's like too much. No.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm having to say no to them on their Chromebooks because there's games they want to
So they
play when
bring
they're
them
home.
home.
They bring them home to charge them nightly.
Okay.
And there are educational games, but there are also kind of borderline games that they have access to there. And, you can access YouTube and there are things that are blocked, but it's not perfect. So, like, it just feels like I'm fighting at home another thing I have to say no to versus it feeling like a positive
So
at this
here in
current stage.
California, there's some iPads, but not quite one to one at TK, Kinder, and First. And then in second, they go one to one with the Chromebooks, but they keep them at school in
Mhm.
second and third. And it's not
Okay.
until fourth grade that they come home in the backpacks. And that has helped, I think, a little bit. Just they're not bringing it home. I don't have to fight the fight.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a lot of questions about just how are these being used,
Right.
and I guess I have mixed feelings because I have friends in ed tech who I think have built really powerful, thoughtful, good pieces of software to try to personalize the learning. And I see a lot of benefits in that. I can remember even growing up and being a little bored or something. It's like, if my kid's getting pushed because they can be at a more accelerated level, or the opposite, my kid's struggling and they need a little extra something.
Mhm.
I really can see the value of that personalized learning. Um, and I absolutely worry that it's being used, oh, class got done 20 minutes early. Everybody just get on your computers for 20 minutes to kind of kill time. And
Mhm.
I feel like I've seen that, and I feel like I hear that, and
Bingo. Yep.
I don't know. John,
And I,
tell us what.
yeah, I think one thing that's really important, I think to ask of schools to a certain degree, and one thing I haven't even talked about is the impact on how tech influences the way that teachers plan and what that means for their works. We're facing a teacher shortage in the United States. So I can get into that in a minute and why I think it's both essential, but also you have to really rein in how educators use it. But one thing to think about is how is it used as a carrot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess a stick in some cases. Um, and so one, like I'll give you an example. My daughter has a little tracker. It's really an engagement tracker that kind of follows her throughout the day. So each class, her teachers can give her a couple marks. One is, did I engage in the work right away? And to the best of my ability, did I, complete the work or complete what I was asked to do? And
Are you
every
getting
day,
that in real time? Feedback in real time of what's
yeah, at the
going
end of
on?
the class or the end of a thing with the teacher, they give her one of these marks.
Okay.
And so, but at the end of the day, she can get anything from like level 1, which would be a really poor day in terms of that, versus level 4. And so every day she'll come out and I got 4 down. She gets real excited, and she gets rewards during their choice time at the end of the day, which is about 15-20 minutes. And one of those is at the end, if she gets level 4, she can go outside and play in the gym or whatever's available, or potentially get on her Chromebook and do some things on there. And so I think most of the time she picks her Chromebook. And I haven't gone to the degree of saying, hey, can we talk about that? Could that be just a couple days a week that she gets that or more?
Mm-hmm.
But one is how is it be used as an incentive? And does that sound like appropriate to you as a parent or even as a school?
Mhm.
I think school leaders have a big role in determining how that's going to be used for our community and how you can leverage that as a reward, especially if the reward is something like you get to watch, I don't know, YouTube videos or something on that's kind of free that it may not be great. But the second one, I think, then is how you use it. I lost my train of thought here a little bit, but like as a reward, but then also to fill time, to your point, Kate.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, this comes back to bigger issues about how schools being run and what are our expectations on our educators and how are we maximizing time. But too often it's like, we got 20 minutes, go ahead and get on your computers. Or, well, the activity for today is to get on and do some loose research on something. Meanwhile, kids aren't really doing that research. They're on videos and,
Playing. Yeah.
scrolling and playing on things. And so it's how you manage that time. And so I think a lot of that just comes down to what are the expectations of a teacher? How quality are they and what they're expecting? Because great ones can leverage technology really well.
Mhm.
But the poorly run schools, poorly run classrooms aren't leveraging these things in effective ways. But that comes back to a bigger practice around, I think, just the structures of their rooms, right?
As a parent, I'm not one that's super vocal in the school unless there's like a major issue. Like I almost like get more nervous to bring something up to our principal in this way that's negative. What's like a good way for a parent to approach the school, or what types of things can we ask of the school that's not too crazy? That would align with what we're saying, which is let's use tech in a healthier way. How are we using it? Like how would you say we approach that as a parent?
Yeah, I mean, I think I will argue number one that asking anything about your kids and their education experience, especially, and this is the hard thing, if it's well informed, is you're right.
Right.
And so I
Well, it's
think
good to know that
whatever
as an
question,
educator you think that, because you
yeah,
don't want to be overstepping as a parent too, a
yeah. Well,
little bit.
imagine your clients ask for something,
Yeah,
and you're going to do whatever
that's
you
a good
can to make
point.
it work, unless it gets to the point where you think they're misinformed or they're
Mhm.
wrong. Then
Mhm.
you will do that, and that's the same here. Like my clients are my kids and their parents, and so I think whatever questions you're asking, especially if you're coming through it with a lens of curiosity and just wondering, is very different than an assumption that the school is doing it wrong, right?
Do you have parents that are asking for kind of, we call it tech abstinence, but like Do you have parents pressuring you for I want no tech, or do
Uh,
you have parents pressuring for more or more visibility, or what's the kind of like vibe?
yeah, I've not had, in my experience, too much of the tech abstinence yet.
Okay.
Um, I think most seem to understand that there is a role for it in schools, and it would be hard sometimes to tell schools none of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they will do things like take their kids' computers away at home, or
Mm-hmm.
not allow them to do that, which I'm all for. And I think that's where schools we have to ask what's the role of what we're asking kids to do on their computers at home, as an
Mm-hmm.
example of that. I actually think, in my particular experience, and I don't think this is universal, but in my specific situation, I think there's a lot more of just unawareness of how kids are using tech and how unhealthy it is. It actually, in my situations, has brought on more, I think, behavior situations around bullying. I can think of a situation this fall where I had to watch, it was terrible. I had to watch like all these hours of young ladies sitting in um, like a, I don't know, Instagram live sort of room where they were in there and others could observe them
Mm-hmm.
while they're like vaping and talking like a lot of crap about another kid and just like really, and I had to get to the bottom of what was happening and what was said. Um, and so I think there's this idea that, oh, kids just, I don't know what they're doing and it's okay. And so that's where I think schools actually have a role of saying this can be really powerful, but we have work to do to help our families know the impact of this outside of school in terms of what it does, in terms of what our kids bring to school.
Yeah,
Um,
one
yeah.
thing I've heard from a couple friends around here is that as their kids are a little bit older, but they're still in elementary school, so like fifth grade. But the kids have figured out a way to chat through like during the classroom with Google Slides. There's no chat, but they understand that if they invite their friends to the Google sheet,
Mhm.
that they can chat and go back and forth. And that's where some inappropriate things are being said, and it's hard to monitor from the school perspective, but also as a parent, I feel like that shouldn't be allowed.
Right.
You know,
And then,
like,
well, and then if kids have emails, they use it as a chat system while they're on their computers because some schools have that. We had those
What
issues.
do you guys do, John, for safety? So, like, there are software tools out there to allow teachers or maybe like some sort of administrator to like view the screens in real time. Or do you guys have anything like that to make sure it's locked down, so to speak?
Yeah, and I won't pretend to know like the back end firewall part of
Mm-hmm.
this really well, and certainly could find someone that kind of talks to you more about how districts and folks kind of handle that side of it. Although that's just quite often not enough because I think there's only so much they protect, but it's going to have a hard time protecting against what Anne says because
mhm.
we
Right.
have access to slides to make presentations. How do you shut that down? Go Guardian is one thing that schools use pretty well. Go Guardian is actually a way that a teacher will have visibility of all the kids' screens on their computer at once and
Mm-hmm.
see what they're
Mhm.
working on.
Yeah, I've heard of that one and Securely, which I think is similar, where it's,
Yeah,
everyone, hey, I'm asking you to do this assignment. And by the way, I'm up here looking at all your screens.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's so that's really good for visibility and presence and kind of keep kids on that. I will also argue there is nothing perfect, but a teacher who's observing the room, circulating, and just constantly aware and like really leaning into awareness of what kids are doing will
Mm-hmm.
mitigate it without a fancy tech tool. Like more often, I could have a teacher
Yeah.
that has Go Guardian who does a much poorer job than that, than someone who I think has a really good grasp on what my expectations are right now. What are we working on? What are you producing? And how am I doing that intentional circulation to see what you're doing?
Mhm.
Not too much into pedagogy, but I would just, for educators out there or schools or parents, it isn't about just someone saying, hey, we have Go Guardian, it works in every room. You're going to want to learn a lot more about how teachers are being trained on the ability to just kind of monitor kids' work in general through that as well. So,
And do you have a sense for just like how much screen time kids are getting during school hours?
I mean, it's going to depend on any school, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't have too much of a sense. I think you can imagine that in any given class, let's say it's an hour. And I guess the question here is too, are we talking more on like their one-to-one devices or if it's on the smart board being presented? I mean, what
I
can
guess
you,
I feel like one-to-one devices
yeah.
because to
Mhm.
me, that's like, it's the difference between we're learning together versus
Mhm.
you're kind of on your own and, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. So how much like one-on-one computer time do you think they're
Yeah.
getting?
I mean, in any given hour, I would say probably 20 to 30 minutes of that is going to be used on it. Maybe more because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times especially new curriculums will have the slides that kids can get through a platform and then they're answering questions through the reading in there as well, and so they'll be
Mm-hmm.
there. those questions go live to the teacher. I mean, some of it's really great because the teacher's getting live answers, can respond real time,
Mm-hmm.
can showcase a kid's answer. That's really great. And so you can have classrooms that are up to 3/4 of the time is on the computer responding to what the teacher is presenting and material. I worked with a science curriculum this past year that has a lot of cool, like, electronic simulations that they're doing, right, that are based in this program.
I like
To
that. I
me,
think that sounds like the good part
yeah,
of technology
Good
in the
screen time.
classroom.
that
Yeah.
sounds good. The problem is when you have folks that are not managing that well or
Mm.
aren't like building a really solid agenda, and it's just like, okay, kids, just like go through the deck. What you want to know more about is how are kids, even if they're on those platforms, engaging with each other. Are we actually communicating with each other about, like, let's answer this question together? And is the teacher leading an appropriate um, debrief of that question? In Doug's article, he talks about the sense of belonging, and one of the things they focus on is kids speak and we look at each other when we're talking, right? This idea
Yeah.
of like we're building like really solid community. That doesn't mean having the computers in front of them does it, but is the teacher asking them to quarter that so we can um, talk to each other and hear each other? And so I think a lot of it is just like, what's the emphasis on how instruction's being delivered,
Yeah.
and how much time are kids collaborating and working together um, in community with these things versus just one-on-one with
Yeah,
them.
that's a good point. It's like those interactions where you're talking about where the kids answer from the device, right? And they can share it on the screen. I like those, like even in adult presentations, it's kind of a cool way to engage the audience. However, it's not teaching kids how to like, it's easy to answer anything on the screen, right? We always talk about that. It's like you want to also teach them how to socialize and be confident in raising your hand and saying it out loud and answer why. And to your point, you're saying that's more of like the teacher themselves and how they're handling the situation.
Yeah, but I would also add to your point, Anne, I think there's another part to this too that's problematic is a lot of times especially in the curriculum space, what's happening is a lot of the things are still pretty quick hitting, right? Like, oh, here's a short excerpt, answer a short question, and it's like really fast paced. Especially as kids get older, I think the time that they have to spend in intense task should increase. There's an article called like the elite college students who can't read books. It
Yeah,
was
I
by
read that one.
this one. And the problem is that even kids who are making their ways into these elite institutions aren't spending time doing things like reading full books. And that starts early. You've probably seen that even in your elementary schools. How often are they just reading excerpts of things or quick things for the sake of kind of reading proficiency, which, I understand the space for that and the time it allows for more accurate, different sort of measurements for teachers to make to see how kids are reading in terms of their fluency, their comprehension. But man, our kids also need to learn time towards like a dedicated task for a while. I think reading a book is important. I think writing longer prompts for a writing prompt is really important. My stance is, even though my kids had one-to-one, they always had to handwrite their writing. Actually, they always had to handwrite their essays before they could go and then type it, for a couple of reasons. One, I just think their brains with that pencil in hand was a lot different. But once they got to the computer, they started editing, right? And so they started changing the way that it sounded from the paper to there. And so that change of medium was really important. So I just think to your point, it's good, but it's still teacher kind of led. And then also it has to be balanced with tasks that I think are just like way more complex, lengthier, and require an attention span that's pretty consistent versus real choppy as well.
Yeah, there's been a lot of research that we've put into our guidebook and other things about attention fragmentation. And I think we focused a little more on the research that we found around short form video. But short form video, think like YouTube shorts.
Yep.
How the context switching and the pace and speed is really creating and linked to a lot of attention span issues. Have you heard, and it sounds like, you believe in these long format exercises and curriculum. Have you heard that from teachers too, that kids are more distracted, more fragmented? Like, is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, like very fragmented. I mean, the idea of kind of getting kids for something that's not a video, I think staying focused for a long time is quite challenging. Again, I'm not going to put that all on kids or say it's a lost cause. I think sometimes it's still our expectations and how we set up our schools and our classrooms, because I think kids are capable of it. But it's definitely more of an uphill climb than it was when I first came into education. Right. because everybody's brain is being wired for quicker hit things. I mean,
Right.
I know I just said this.
Gamified everything. Yeah.
Gamified everything. I think even the way that, again, the way we're writing curriculum often is, okay, do this for a minute. Now do this. Now go back to here and go here. And
Right.
that's great. I mean, I'm like all about urgency and pacing in classrooms and so on. But man, if you're not giving kids time where it's like, you've got 15 minutes to dig into this on your own, and then you're going to have 7 minutes to debrief it with your partner, I think we got big questions, especially the older they get. Obviously those time segments change when kids are younger,
Right.
but as they get older, they should be able to lengthen it. And I actually think as they get older, there's there's a haphazardness to their being and a freneticness to their beings quite often that we noticed, especially when they came back from the pandemic, but I think has persisted. That we're just maybe not doing enough, or realizing now we need to do more to like get rid of some of that freneticness and allow them to pace themselves differently.
I find it so fascinating. I have never thought about it from the educator's perspective of changing the curriculum to better fit the culture of kids having more things that are coming at them all the time. Like that. When did you see that change specifically in the curriculum?
And look, I'm going to start by saying I am actually a huge fan of assessments. I am like, this may be an unpopular opinion, but I think there's value to assessments that hold schools accountable. And I mean, and when I'm saying this, I'm even saying like state testing and things like that. And I do think the more that we spend time responding to only what those tests tell us, I think this is just a lack of creativity. I think too often the response was, well, we need to give them these standard-based like practices and skill development, right? Well, what's that led to? One, a lack of actual in-depth content learning in things like history. We've stopped teaching content. We've started teaching excerpts from history, how to read this article, but too many kids are like not understanding what led up to the Civil War and what were the reasons behind that. What happened in, post World War II world, that, whatever it might be, there's a lack of content because we're still so focused on what's the skill you're developing ultimately, so you can showcase that skill on here. Would argue whether it's science or history, or even in the way that we run our reading and writing courses, are you giving kids time to go in depth on content? For a matter of fact, like one of the biggest gaps in kids reading, especially poor kids, is just lack of exposure to content that comes up in school. And so the more time we're giving them opportunities to dig in on that, especially in depth, the better. And so, yeah, I think hopefully that I didn't get away from the answer too much there. Or the question.
No, I'm like
not at all.
trying to take what you're saying and sort of like create a framework, which is one, it sounds like a lot of the screen time, and this mirrors sort of what we say, screen time can be good and the content matters. Like what you're doing on those screens matters. It's not a hard and fast. People always goes, what's the screen time that every parent should use for their kids? And it's like, well, what's the screen time? I feel real differently about how much time they get to watch YouTube shorts. None. But very little, to what's the time that you can do, an interactive thing online or something with us. So I guess what I'm hearing from you is something very similar, which is maybe there's not a hard, this is the amount of screen time, that's sort of what good looks like throughout a day. Right. But the questions around it to our schools is more, how much is longer attention type exercises? How is it being used in a classroom? And I guess like, how as a parent do we know if it's being used well? How, like, what questions would help us like get to the root of that?
Yeah. I mean, I would say number one, what's your kind of, so that's hard, right? You aren't going to be at the school every day. And there is something that we have to put in our institutions, which is just a level of trust. I hope. That's one thing I want to speak to, is I think one thing schools have faced a big backlash on is trust. And that's just because of institutions in our world just don't trust anymore, right? In general. And so what we can do to kind of like go about this, as I was saying, with a level of curiosity and wondering and before we're assuming the way they're acting, I think is really important. I would say that I would continue to ask questions about, hey, tell us a little bit more about what are your expectations around technology in the classroom? Can a teacher and can a principal articulate that? If they can't, or it's really vague, that would pose a lot of questions for me on, I wonder how it's being used. number one, how is it being used as an incentive structure?
Mm-hmm.
Is a good starting place.
Mm-hmm.
How is it being used as an engagement, method? Like we put kids on screens and it kind of keeps them calm. The better ones are going to be able to say we use, tech really in these ways. Hopefully they use it around assessment. I think that's really important. If they're
Mm-hmm.
not talking about how they use it assessment, especially as kids get older. I mean, I think a
Mm-hmm.
little bit younger. Um, that's important. Two, if it's, if they're talking about it as part of a curriculum, I think that's great. Ask them how the curriculum uses tech and what that looks like. How much of it is like video based versus, text box based and article based. And then I think third, just like how are kids interacting around tech together? Is it healthy? Are they using it to, communicate better? Are they responding to it in conversation with each other? And you just want to ensure that you have classrooms, I think, where there's just a lot of interaction and that kids are still working together and they're getting time to go deep on something on their own
Yeah,
while doing that.
that's good advice. One pivot I have, which is moving away from like the one-to-one Chromebooks or whatnot, but the whole controversy around cell phones. And so
Mm-hmm.
we were kind of talking about, certain school districts are New York, LA, trying to ban cell phones. Have you seen first in middle school, like an impact that cell phones are having? Like, are you seeing a lot of kids walking around with cell phones in middle school?
I mean, most of the schools that I've worked in have started more like you can't have them out during the day. I mean, I
Bell
support
to bell or just in
bell to
class?
bell. Bell to-
Yeah.
And if middle school, a lot of the high schools that are associated with the schools I have will have something where it's like can't be out in class. Some have said, oh, you can have them during transitions. Other ones I've said you can only have them out during lunch, and that's high school. I'm sure there's middle schools that operate that same way. Um, I mean, I have a, I'm more like just get rid of them. Frankly, I
Yeah.
would. That's where I stand. I'm sure it's complicated. I'm sure there's a lot of politics and a lot of beliefs from parents, but
Why do you say that, John?
I just think I think there's been more problems with the advent of cell phones in kids' hands than there was before. I know we talk a lot about safety and how are they getting, and I get that in a world where there's a school shooting all the
Right.
time and
Mm-hmm.
so much. I totally get it. How much of that has been spurred on? I mean, number one, in my personal opinion, it's about guns. But second, there is something about the way that um, cell phones are used in terms of creating problems, creating hatred towards each other, that
Right.
kids just haven't learned to use it well. I just don't think they're needed at schools, frankly. And so I support, what I've seen is, again, it comes back to this entitlement thing. If a kid's allowed to have it in school, and this is often a problem with parents as well, a very strong opinion of like, no, you can't take my kid's phone from them or we can't have it. But it just leads to so many problems about disengagement in class as a starting point, but bullying, I think, just any sort of thing like just that it can really harm schools. So
Yeah.
I take a pretty firm stance on that. I actually support districts and places that are like, don't let them in schools. I'm sure there's a middle ground there, but I just have never seen anything good that comes from kids having cell phones in
What
schools.
you touched on it, which is a huge thing that I hear is it's the safety. The parents want to have access to get a hold of their kid if something was to happen. And hopefully that never happens, right? And the percentage of that happening across the country is low, but it's still a big fear in parents. Are you open to like smart watches with the messaging and things not being accessible and the internet not being accessible, but the parent kid messaging? Or are you kind of banning that? Like your thought is to ban that as well?
I mean, this sounds weird because I just said earlier, as a parent, you're right to make sure things are going well for your kid. My question is, when we went to school, you called the front office and
Right.
they got a hold of you. And I get the world's different. And part of that's because we've just become used to that immediate access.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and here's the thing I'll say about that. For every parent that would use that appropriately, there are other parents who I've seen, we have so many issues that come up because of like the kid messaging with their parents creates a lot of harm for the school and a lot of challenges. And so I can be on board with it. I think it just depends on how your school sets it up. And I think the number one thing is just having a good policy as a school that incorporates like your families and it educates them on why you're doing it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. The answer to that one is I don't really know. I think I would just want to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
I've read about this so much too. And like what I always tell parents when they say, well, what if there's a school shooting? Or what if I need to reach my kid? I go, the research shows The
Yeah.
worst thing your kid can do in an active shooter situation is be trying to message you. They need to be aware. They need to be, eyes on the surrounding. I think this idea that like they're actually messaging you in a moment of panic is like a nightmare, actually. So it's like, we got to actually just think not what makes you feel good. What makes parents feel good is reassurance from their kid immediately. I totally understand that. I would feel the same. I do feel the same way. But that's actually not what save us for your kids. So like, again, we need to continue to do what is actually good for our kids here. And like, I push back on that. I'm like, that is not a good enough reason. And I do think schools need to have safety measures and protocols. And here's exactly what we're going to do, and emergency messages to parents and updates. And like, all of that has to be part of it to make parents feel at ease.
Yeah.
But the distraction factor is like undeniable. The research on academic performance when a cell phone is even in your pocket, even in your bag, is horrible. I think enforcement, we've heard so many complaints on like, if you can do it in transitions or you can do it at lunch, then it's damn near impossible to police because a teacher's walking and kids on their phone. You don't know if they're in the middle of a transition or something else. So it's like, if it's clean bell to bell, it's much easier enforcement. And at elementary school, pretty much across the country, there's not a lot of pushback. They're like, yeah, right. Elementary kids are not ready for that. What I've heard is middle school, it's mixed, where some areas parents feel like, no, I should be able to reach my kid. I want my kid to have a phone nearby at least. And then in high school, I think it's even more, where kids obviously want the phones. I think parents feel mixed. I don't know. What is your level of parent support at the middle school level, which I think is like right in that gray area of like whether people are on board or not? Do you have support to go bell to bell?
Yeah, overall, I will say we don't get big group outlash, right? We don't get like a contingency of parents that have said, I don't agree with this rule. We have to make it this way. It's more in my particular circumstances, one off, right?
Yeah.
But those are still hard, man, because you spend a lot of time often in a situation, frankly, because it rose up because of a kid who's having other challenges, frankly, related to behavior, and the phone is a part of that. And what we find is when the parent isn't on board with us on a lot of things, but in this case, like the phone, it just creates a really awful dynamic that then we're spending a lot of our time debating and working through this issue. Now, granted, like I said, for a particular kid, that could be related to a bunch of stuff. So we're going to spend a lot of time with them anyway. But, I think the more we can do things like what you all are doing and just create collective awareness and consciousness of, I think what you said, Kate, is spot on. Most of the things we're worried about, there's nothing in the data that actually says it's worse than it was a while ago, or that these things keep anyone safer or healthier or happier. And so we have like a duty, I think, at some points to say we just got to cut it off, or we're going to have to do something that creates a much healthier approach to it. So no big outcry. I'm sure there are schools and communities that have, but even the amount of time you spend with individuals working through that's pretty time consuming.
Well, I think high school is where you get the most controversy, where you have some contingent going, hey, these are 15 to 18-year-olds who are about to go to college. They need to know how to use this. They need to learn. I need to talk to them. They have things they got to do. I mean, there's that contingent of people. Then you have other people that go, hey, it's a huge distraction and they still need to focus on the learning and they're losing social skills. So get it out of there. And then I think you have some people that go, is there a middle ground? Is there sometimes during the day where they could check? Is there lunch hour where they could check? But I can tell you, if you go to a high school at lunch, which I've done just to meet with people through Sage Haven things, it's like quiet because they're all on their phones. They're not even talking. It's weird. So it makes me feel weird. I can tell you that. I don't know, if it was my kid one way or the other, but it's like definitely the dynamic is different in the lunchroom if there's phones.
The messaging each other when you're next to each other is also strange for me. And that is happening a lot too. It's like, just look up, but nope, we're going to message each other. It's just strange.
Yeah.
I think to your point, they are still 15 to 18-year-olds. Like, they're not adults.
Right. Well, it's just such a social, it's like if you feel awkward at all in a social situation, I mean, adults do this too.
Yep.
You go to your phone because it's like, oh, I look busy. I'm not awkward.
It's a crutch.
Myself at 15, like to have that crutch as opposed to like work through those awkward social interactions in the lunchroom or wherever. I just think that's that's where I see it the most, and it kind of makes sense. But I'm like, oh, I think my gut says we got to force them through that awkwardness IRL, and those are really important skills they're going to miss. And the high school, they're on screens, they're on their cell phones in their pocket over an hour a day during school hours, according to the article we can link. That feels ick to me. That feels like that's not it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this idea of like we've got to prepare them for when they go to college and they need the cell phones. I mean, come on, they're going to learn how to use it, and they're
Yeah,
going to be.
they know how to use it.
Yeah.
They haven't conditioned themselves. They are not going to. They have. If you wait that long, you have not conditioned yourself, I think, to use it as a crutch, to see unhealthy habits of you and your peers using it. You might pick it up, but you're more likely to avoid some of the, I think, real
Mhm.
things that happen for kids who are experiencing that from like 10 years old to 18-year-old. This idea that they're not going to be prepared, or all of a sudden that's going to make them super unhealthy in how they use their tech, I just blatantly disagree.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
John, I was hoping you would talk about one more thing too. And this might be a little self-serving because we're launching a safer messaging app, but I know that schools get pulled in to deal with bullying or inappropriate content that's happened on group chat. And it's not like the school authorized the group chat. It's all forming organically, but then it's the school's issue to police that. Has that come up in your life? You mentioned the Instagram live with the vaping and the bullying, but like how much is that part of your life? Is this a one-off? Is this
Big? I mean, it's the biggest frustration.
Okay.
Like what I've seen in schools is the kids' access to smartphones, and especially use of like terrible social media apps, and what that means. Because this, we could just say, well, it happened outside school hours, we can't do anything about it, and we'd like to say that, but the truth of it is, it impacts us greatly, because we're dealing with a kid who got bullied. We're spending more time investigating who said what here and what happened, and calling parents about it, because it's just so insidious in terms of like what it does to kids, and like how it kind of harms their relationships. And we have to work through that, because kids can't learn if they come into school in this way. And then often parents, I know you said that, hey, it's not our job because it happens organically. There are a lot of parents that put that on the school. This is your job to kind of investigate this stuff, because these are kids in your school and they're hurting my kid. Right. And I get that. Like, when you're a parent, you're looking for anything you can to help you out when your kid's struggling. But that's just where I think, beyond it, whether schools can take a part in this as well, just educating our families on limited screen and phone time outside of schools, really ensuring that your kids don't have the apps that they shouldn't have, goes a long way, because what's happening is schools are spending a lot more of their time dealing with this, working through this.
Yeah.
When they should be focusing on what's happening in the classroom. Is learning productive today? Are kids making gains? And do my kids in the school feel happy right now?
I think too, we hope to just be a resource for parents and schools, where schools can, even educate the parents on Sage Haven app if there is an issue where it's like there is something that is going to block harmful messages altogether, and you'll have a little bit more control. We hope to just be a resource for both sides to kind of help out, because it's a huge issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unavoidable that kids are going to use these to a certain degree. And that's where I think, as a parent, and especially if you're in this world, because I get this dilemma, although I only have an 8-year-old, so it's hard to know now. But at some point, they're going to feel a little left out. They're going to feel a little bit like, well, everyone else gets this. And frankly, I don't like to deal with my kid feeling that way. But if there's also a healthy option that incorporates me into the equation, and some trusted friends and folks, then I think that's great.
Well, and we talk a lot about like collective action. This is a collective action issue. If every parent got together and said, hey, what are we going to do? And agreed, you wouldn't have any of the, hey, everybody else has got it. Now, that's not realistic, but I have been thinking about how we should work with schools. Ann and I talk about this a lot. Like, how should we partner with schools? And since we put out the guidebook, a bunch of schools have reached out and said, hey, could you talk to parents at our school? Like, we're figuring out the norms, or we want collective action around this. We want to delay social media access or phone ban. We want support for that. Like, have parents reached out to you to help them with collective action, or have you worked with your parent community, or do you have any advice for Ann and I as we think about like how to engage with schools?
Yeah. I mean, not well enough on our end. I think a lot of ours comes through, messaging and our beliefs and kind of what our policies are. I think it would be a resource that a lot of schools would use, if it's like even something as hey, we've put together, perhaps you guys could go speak to a district and kind of share your experience. But I even think for schools to have access to a resource that lays out all the data
Mm-hmm.
that helps to say, hey, schools, here's some options that we have found through our research are some healthy options for how to bridge this challenging situation. And they could utilize that as a resource and then use it to make presentations to their families and their community, to put together, even groups of like a task force of parents to help think through it. Because these things, they don't only work through, just saying like, we're taking a real stance on this and this is what you have to do as families. Like, that's, if nothing else, that's good. I would want schools taking a stance to do what's right for what they see in kids at school. It gets more traction and it's more long lasting when it's a community effort. It involves families. They're
Mm-hmm.
getting educated on it well, and they're a part of it. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think schools and districts will look for that. I think education conferences need this. And the fact that you guys are also ed tech is important, because so many of these conferences are, look at all the cool ed tech tools. And they're all, I think many of them are well meaning and really great.
Mm-hmm.
Still a lot of, if you're not using this, you're falling behind and your kids are falling behind and do it. I think that's something that says like, we can be tempered in that. And we really need to also think about how we're, being smart about this in their schools. So I think something that similar to your guidebook puts out some, hey, here's some possible solutions, could be a path to go down. I mean, I certainly have some thoughts on that. But
Mm-hmm.
I think schools would lap up that sort of resource. I think education conferences could use this voice in them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately, I think districts are going to be looking more guidance, because I think where they're at right now as districts is, do we ban this totally, or do we just keep the status quo and put it on our schools to figure this out? And so having something that's more of the, here's some advice and some thought out way of approaching this, I think could be really beneficial.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
Well, John, this was super educational, and I love the perspective from an educator and parent. I think I learned a lot today. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just so nice to have your perspective. So we really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. And I think it would be kind of fun now to pivot to the end matter, which is our obsessions.
Ooh, nice.
And wanted you to kick it off for us with, what is your obsession this week?
Yeah, I thought about this one knowing we'd be talking a lot about tech, but I'm going with some tech stuff because I do think tech is good. It's helpful when done well. I know, Ann, this goes back to something you said beginning of the year about using Chat GPT. And so recently, through some learning I was doing with some others, they really promote this idea of conversations with Chat GPT. I think I always thought of Chat GPT as just a product creator for me, like, oh, I need this, make it for me, or make this list. But they've actually encouraged us how to, and I'm starting my own kind of solo business right now. And it was like, how are you engaging in conversations with ChatGPT so it knows about you and your business and understands it and can prompt your thinking?
Mm-hmm.
That's been pretty cool. It's not that I've made anything through that or created, but the idea of it's like like it's kind of taken my thinking and adding on to it has been really fun for me.
Are you falling in love with a Scarlett Johansson voice yet, or?
No, I've got Corey or Covey. I
Okay.
picked a gentleman with a nice, I don't know, he's got a nice voice, but I
Nice
picked
tone.
Kofi. I don't know if that was in Corey. I'm not sure.
He's going to be upset. Just so
I
you
know.
know. Yeah.
I know. And then just real quick, since I only get to be on here once, Loom is a tool I've been using.
Yes.
Loom is a real easy recording device that attaches to the different applications in your computer. And so, for example, if I'm on a document and I want to voice over this, like I'm sending it to a team of people, but a long email would be painful to write and take a long time, and they're probably not going to read it. They're going to skim it. Can put something together a little bit quicker with a Loom. I think it's more engaging. If you're a school leader and you want to get some information out to your staff, but you're afraid they're not going to read the email, I think a quick Loom is something that they can do. But it's just been really fun and interactive. Now I've had to temper myself because an email that should have been just, a paragraph, I was like, I'll do a Loom for it. And then it became longer than actually reading the paragraph.
Well, we are big Loom users.
Yes, we use it from a product demo side, and we've even thought as we grow to your point, like instead of doing a team update where it has to be a whole Zoom call, just sending out a Loom. Like there's a lot of great use cases. That's a great one.
Yeah, it's great for remote teams.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Anne, what's your obsession?
My obsession is, yes, I always go like clothes, food. I wanted to pivot, but something that has been bringing me joy is an indoor plant.
Okay.
And I kill everything. My husband keeps things alive. I kill everything inside. And so, plant related, I should say. So it is called a ZZ plant. And I'm sure there's a longer name for it that I'm not going to try to pronounce, but ZZ plant is
Okay.
it.
Is
And
it a succulent or what is it?
it's kind of a glossy green, bigger plant. So it's not tiny. It's a large plant, like kind of that sits on the floor in a big basket. But it is beautiful, very hard to kill. I found out, love it, and it doesn't require too much sunlight. So it kind of sits in our living room with a little bit of sunlight, but not direct sunlight. And everything I have put there before has died on me because it's just not the right place for it,
Yeah.
or and it's kind of in direct zone of like the dogs and the kids run by it. So this
How much
plant,
watering does it need?
not that much, like once a week, and it's pretty minimal amount of water, and it just looks really pretty. So
Love that for you.
ZZ indoor plant, hard to kill, easy to
Cool.
love.
All right.
What about you, Kate?
Well, I am team fat oil now. I
Oh,
found
yeah.
it at Target,
Welcome,
and
welcome.
it's pretty great. Into it. Good one, Sarah. Also, my obsession is hot firefighters. I know this might seem like it's coming out of left field, but
Go on.
Do tell.
we took my kindergarten son had a field trip to the fire department. The whole field trip was 1 hour. Chef's kiss. That's the right amount of time for a kindergarten field trip. They have one right by their school too, which was cute. We just walked over. The firefighters, why are all firefighters hot? I guess this is a stereotype that had eluded me for a while, but I walked in with a handful of other mothers and there were like 3 firefighters there. We were all, one of them was about to fake an injury, I thought, to get some extra attention. They were all attractive. They were so cute with the kids. We got to go through, they did the whole fire truck thing. They gave them hats, but
I love this obsession. I'm going to double down for you and say I would like to give a shout out to the Santa Monica Fire Department, because we used to live by the fire station.
Yeah.
And we would go into our local coffee shop and they would come in pretty often. And I just remember like our mother was visiting one time, and I think it was Sarah, not you. And we were in the coffee shop and we went silent. They went in to get a cup of coffee, and that you could have heard a pin drop with all the women sipping their coffee, just very silently looking at all of them.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a 75%, 80% of them are hot.
Yeah. Good one.
And like a good mustache. I was like, okay.
Good looking, and their work is good. They put out fires. There's nothing wrong with these people.
No, and they're cute with kids.
There you
I
go.
mean,
Nailed it.
wave it in. Obsessed.
Okay, I like that one.
Yeah, there we go.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you again to John. If you, as the community out there, have any additional questions, you can send them our way, and we're happy to send them to John and get them answered on a future podcast. But I just really appreciated your perspective. So good stuff.
Expert opinions here on Sage Sisters. There you go.
Great
Thank you, John.
You're doing good work. Thank you both.
Awesome. If you haven't already, please rate us 5 stars, share with your group chat, put it on the Facebook mom group. We really appreciate it. We are growing organically, which is exciting. So thank you for all of you who have done that already. You can also watch this video on YouTube. So we're there as well. Subscribe. And you can find us on Instagram at Sage Parents, where we try to provide tips, tricks, and inspo for parenting in the digital age in a sane way. All right. That's a wrap. All right.
Lilas.
And see you, John. Thank you.